Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Steph Gooch, and I'm a senior SA advocate here to help you on your FinOps journey. And today we are talking all about securing your lovely AWS accounts to actually help you save money. So we're going off of the episode we did 2 weeks ago where we brought in Mike from Nubank, where we talked a lot about how, from a FinOps point of view, he was able to use cost data to find some security stuff. And I thought, why not bring in my friend Mark, who is a security expert, to come and give a little bit more depth in this holistic FinOps series we're doing. But Mark, do you want to give everyone your 1 minute origin story to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. So, Mark Keating, I'm one of the principal security specialists in AWS. I joined just over 6 years ago now, and I focus really on helping our global healthcare life sciences and our global automotive and manufacturing customers. So, pretty much all of those top sort of 15 or 20 customers in each of those groups with their security stuff. So, when they got challenges, I'm one of the people that they call on.
Nice. And I've got lovely hellos in the chat. Hello to everyone. Keep using that chat feature as much as you like to ask us questions throughout the show. Or if you're watching us on demand on YouTube, don't forget that you can comment down below with any questions. I always look back at the episodes to check in. And also give the video a like while you're there so others can find it too. But like we said, we're talking about security. So as a reminder, we're doing a bit of a holistic FinOps series this quarter. So we're touching on a lot of stuff. We're doing a little bit of observability, some AI security. We're going to do modernization. We're doing backups, lots of things like that. So throughout this series, go back and look across all of the episodes to see that. One little housekeeping thing before we start. Reminder, if anyone is going to FinOps X, then check out mine and Adam and Brent's session. We just actually finished our deck basically today for this session about AI with FinOps. And if you are still debating if you would like to come along, you can use a discount code of Keys to AWS to get money off your ticket. So consider that as part of your thing. We always love to help people save money on this show. So why not do that when it comes to tickets too? Brilliant. So Mark, when we kind of started talking about this a little while ago, when I was picking your brains, because we created a blog on this. We'll come back to the blog in a bit, but I will share in the chat so people can access this. But I came to you being like, hey, I'm looking at this concept with FinOps and security data. And how did you react when I kind of asked you this question?
So it's super interesting because obviously, typically when people come to me, they're like, hey, come and help solve us a security problem. We use our security tools, we get feeds from those, and then we act on it. But it was super interesting, right? Because you came to me and go, how can we kind of use costs as a way to see what's going on? And actually, I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of had to sit back and take a bit of a breath because I was like, I need to think about it. It's not something that I'd
Yeah.
actually really thought about it much before. And this is kind of what sparked that interest. So we had that initial conversation. I was like, actually, I think there's some interesting things that we can do there because you had a couple of ideas. And then I started looking into it as well. And I was kind of like, oh, there's some things that we can look at over here and think, but it's not your traditional way of looking at it. And I think that's what caught me out is I was looking at it, trying to think of it from I'll always look at it from this direction. So it kind of took me back a little bit. But once we actually started looking into it, I was kind of intrigued as to what sort of data points we could pull out and where we could gather some of that data. And I think then we kind of settled on some of the things in the blog, right? Which I know we could cover in a few minutes, but ultimately that's where we kind of, and there were quite a few different things that we could have started going down. And I think we kind of had to kind of squash it to say, here's 5 that we need to start off with. Otherwise, we could have probably run away with that blog for ages. But yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
kind
there's
of
so many
yeah.
things. Go on, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, it was just really different. So, hopefully people are gonna find it useful.
Yeah, and I like because when you guys come in, like you said, a security thing, is it often more proactive or reactive when it comes to security?
So it's a bit of both. Fortunately, it's more on the proactive side. There are times when somebody will call up and go, "Help! We really need something because we've had an issue," and then it's kind of on the reactive. I mean, in the last 6 years that I've been here, the reactive stuff has probably been mostly single digits, maybe low double digits. So it's very, very low from that. Majority of the stuff that I'm doing is proactive, which is
Is
great
it?
because actually it's more this is how we can stop things from happening, or this is how we can help you. Um, and most of the time it's talking to security people, but you kind of still got to get purchasing people and the people who deal with the cost and billing to kind of help. So, and that's why when we started talking about this, I was like, oh, I've got another way in that I can talk to somebody else that they can get a view of
Yeah.
stuff as well. So it's not just the security guys, it's actually the people running the programs and managing the stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always call out that security and FinOps very similar. I mean, I sat in with some of your team's offsite the other day, and some of the things you were talking about with customers were almost the same with FinOps. So things like adoption of best practices and making sure you're rolling this out across organizations and getting them to do the things you want them to do. And I feel like with FinOps, it's exactly the same, where we have this, hey, we want this, but then there's often reasons like around it. So it's a little reassuring that other domains have the same challenge. But it also proves, if you're a FinOps person who's watching this show, like, go and reach out to your security teams, because they may have found a way that they have gotten that adoption and best practice through, whether it's automation or just culture change, already successful in a business. Or maybe you have, and you can collaborate. So all of you go and make some security friends like me and Mark. This is what we want to do. But yeah, keep any questions, comments coming in the show. I'll just drop up the link here to the blog, but we will go through some of the queries that we did in a little bit on that. But before we do, I want to know, like, have you seen many examples of cost kind of influencing security where you've seen it, not as in the service, like not as a security service costing things, but where you've seen spikes in cost and may have said, oh, there might be some issues here?
Yeah, so there's a couple of examples here. So one of them is I was working with a customer, and they had massive spikes in costs coming up. And when they actually started going through some of their billing, what they found was it was less of an issue, but it could have resulted in, but essentially what was happening is they were backing up all their EBS volumes. So they were keeping them backed up, but they didn't actually have a process to go through them and get rid of the old ones that were maybe that had old software on it that was insecure, and so on. And actually what was happening is they ended up with, they had almost 2 years worth of EBS snapshots. And what we did is we managed to actually save them just over $250,000
Wow. On
by
snapshots. Wow.
just on snapshots. I mean, they had thousands of snapshots because from a security perspective, they were told we need to keep everything, but they didn't actually put the process or the retention and life cycle to age things out. So on the face of it, you're going to go, okay, it's a cost thing, it's related to security, but actually there are security challenges with that, because the longer you keep something, especially out of date software, if there's any public sharing or anything, it's a way that there's another way in that somebody can get access to data. So keeping that
Yeah.
ball rolling right the way through. But yeah, we saved them a load of money, and they implemented some cost management on that. But like I said, the first round they did was saving around $250,000, not million. That would have been way too much. Yeah, but about 200. It was about 250K for the year, and then they put that process in place, which they were really pleased with, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, and
Oh, before,
you know, yep,
before on that one, like snapshots as well, folks, like they're ones that sometimes can cause a big amount of waste on spend if there's like changeable things. And
absolutely.
other times they're like a bit useless. But it's interesting to hear of like the security being the reason why you got rid of them, and then it
Yep.
had this like downstream impact. Because I see that there's also I often see it in a similar manner, as where people have like the other way around, where it's like a cost and then they realize something's broken. So we've often talked on this show about incomplete multi-part uploads, and people seeing that as like, oh, it's a waste because something happened. And I've had many customers say like, oh, it was because my Lambda function timed out, and it got half of an upload, and it kept happening and happening, and it's actually like the cost triggered that. So again, like, we want to encourage you to go and make friends with other departments, because this data, like, data's data, right? It can all intertwine so easily. What was the other example you had?
So there's one really small one, and then I've got another one that I'll dive into a little bit more. So the other one was around guard duty, and that was where it was actually the reverse, because what was happening is they were noticing that there was no cost for guard duty. Which is it's kind of the inverse, and they actually managed to spot there were a couple of new accounts that have been spun up effectively, and they noticed that there were no guard duty costs on those accounts, and it actually flagged that way rather than we've got the spike in costs. So they were actually able to use the cost to determine we've actually missed something on those, and then what turned out was new accounts had been onboarded into the organization, but they didn't put the automatic controls in place to automatically enable guard duty for the new accounts. So it was actually a really good one on that one. It's very quick, very simple, but it was a quick one where they actually saw, actually, I'm not being charged there. Why? As opposed
Yeah.
to I'm being overcharged or not being overcharged, but I'm seeing the spike in cost. So that one worked really well. It's kind of like the
Interesting.
inverse, because people,
Yeah.
you always associate something bad happening with high costs, but actually, as an indicator that something's not right is actually the absence of cost as well. Why am I not being
Something's not
charged
supposed to
something?
be.
It's not configured, it's not set up. So that was an interesting one. It was very quick and simple for us to get around. Um,
Yeah. And
so
we have a question which is kind of on this, which is a follow-on, which is how did you see the spike in cost? And also there was a follow-up and the missing cost. Do you know how they noticed that? Was there something that
yeah,
where
so yeah, so the first one, that spike in cost, it was more a case of because with the EBS snapshots, it kind of just went incrementally up. So it wasn't just this massive spike. It just grew slowly over time to the point where nobody really noticed it until they were doing a cost optimization exercise and they were looking at it and they're going, why are we paying so much for snapshots? That just
yeah.
looks extreme. And then they looked into it and then they kind of identified, actually, we got a little bit too much there. We need to trim it down a bit. So that one, again, it wasn't that spike, it was just constant over time, just keeps on creeping up.
Mhm.
And it was when we were doing a cost optimization process with them, so we were looking at things, and then that was flagged. And then on the guard duty one, again, it was a similar thing where we were actually doing a review of something with them and somebody had just pulled up and said, this is where but we've got no costs in this account for some of our security services. And we were like, oh, that's odd. Is it a billing issue? Was it not? And then we went in, it was like, well, actually,
Ah,
it's not enabled. So
interesting.
but a lot of these things come through, especially on the costing side of things. A lot of them come through parts of regular and ongoing reviews
Mhm,
and
mhm,
check-ins on them. Because when you're looking at traditional security stuff, we've always got the logs. There's always alerts. There's always things kicking off automatically. But from a cost perspective, typically there's a smaller number of people. What they do is they review the costs on a monthly or an annual basis. They're looking at it every few months. They might do a cost review optimization project and so on.
mhm,
And that's kind of where it goes through. So we kind of need to get a little bit better at how we do some of the automatic costing stuff, because I think
mhm.
historically it's been very manual and people do it ad hoc. But yeah, so in those cases, it was definitely through let's actually do a review on something around cost. So,
Yeah, and it's I
and
mean,
then,
I remember when I was at KPMG, fellow Big Four historical person, we just talked about Deloitte before we go on. And I remember there was like needing to patch instances, and there was like a massive hit list, and every morning the senior people had to get on the
Mhm.
call and update because they realized there was like, this is a long time ago as well, everyone, but like they had to do like this big update, and it was like a painful process where it was like they
Yeah.
had to do this check-in, but it was similar to how we see cost stuff. It's like we have this list of issues, how do we fix it, and then we think about like how do we bring it into the actual like
Yep.
system and process.
Yeah.
And there's a blog that Rich has kind of dropped in there, which is about using guard duty for continuous
Oh,
threat
there we go.
detection. So
Yeah.
make sure you use
So
that. But we had a bigger example that you wanted to dive into, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, so picture this, right? Monday morning, I get into the office, and I get from the account team that I'm working with, I get the Slack message going, "Can you get into a call with us now? We're on with the customer." I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" Jump onto the call, and the customer was like, "Look, at a high level, over the weekend, we had an incident." And somebody got into the environment, spun up a whole load of EC2 instances doing crypto mining. They had tens of thousands of EC2 instances that were launched that were not supposed to have been launched. And it was a multi-million-dollar cost associated with them.
Wow.
They managed to get control of the situation pretty quickly, but it hit them hard over the weekend. So we kind of did a little bit of looking into it. And we were like, so how can we get around this? Because essentially they saw it because it was flagged by some of our internal services going, there's something strange happening here. What's going on?
Mhm.
And what we did a whole lot of investigation. We found out what the root cause of it. But one of the ways that in which they got to the point of spiking those costs by over $2 million and spinning up all those EC2 instances is they were basically exploiting the quota, service quota limits on machines. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, with all of the AWS services, we get a specific quota, which many of them are soft quotas so that you can increase them depending on what your needs are. So in this case, what they were doing is they were taking the largest EC2 instance types where they've got fairly small quotas so that you spin up thousands of them all at once and remove capacity from everyone else. What they did is they said, I'm in this particular region, I want to double the current quota, and they start spinning up EC2, and they jump into another region, I want to double the quota, and they start spinning them up. And they were taking advantage of the trustworthiness of the customer's account and the reputation of the customer through the auto approval process that was there. And essentially what they did is they spun up tens of thousands of these really large accounts over a few accounts in multiple regions.
Oh my goodness,
right?
The multi-region as well, because some of those regions will cost more.
So there was the impact of that is when the customer was like alerted to it, they were like, crap, we got to find out which one of these. Firstly, how do we tell which are the real ones versus the ones that have just been spun up that are fake or being used for crypto mining? And so once we got over all of that, we said, right, how do we stop this again? And we took a bit of a novel approach, and that was, we said, well, if you can't increase the quotas, you can only go up to a maximum number of instances. Right. So, so what we did is we put in place a service control policy and some permissions that said only this trusted identity or these trusted users would actually be able to do quota increase requests. Right.
Okay.
So there was a whole, don't get me wrong, there was a whole load of other stuff that was done in the environment as well. But one of the things that we did is that we said, even if there was a compromise again in the future, because we always kind of take the mindset of it's not if there will be something happening. We always try and go, when something happens, how do we stop it? What do we do? And so on, right? From a proactive security standpoint. So what we did is we worked on the quota limits, and we put in a process that said we put in a secure service control policy at the top of the organization that said you can't raise a quota limit increase unless you're part of this group or you've got this identity. And then what they did is they put they implemented a process, and they put communication out across all of the AWS account owners and the developers to say, if you need to increase your quotas, this is the process. And they used their ticketing system. It went into there, and then the team actually had a quick SLA turnaround of, I think they started out where they were going to try and do it within 48 hours, but I think they may have even reduced that down after that. Now, when we put that in, they were really worried that they were going to get this big spike in quota requests, but what they found was the complete opposite. Actually, people were just working within the quotas, and there were very few of them. They were single digits a week, which an organization of many thousands, global organization, hundreds and hundreds of AWS accounts, and they were getting quite low numbers. So what we did on that front, like I said, is we took the view that we put in multi-step or multi-layers of defense, but one of them was you can't actually request a quota increase unless you're part of this group. Only they can do it, and you go through this proper process. So again, it's a different way of approaching the traditional way of doing something.
I think SCPs are great. Someone's put in the chat, I love SCPs. A great way of blocking off, and like you said, whenever you put in these really, I used to say the phrase restrict and review. So you can be really strict, but you can't have no communication on that, because suddenly people are going to get blocked from doing their work. And having that global message saying, hey, we're doing this because of this, like we need to do this. And you're right, in reality, people aren't going to be, it's like we always say about using, like putting on an SCP to block metal instances. What they have metal? Because they're really expensive, and reality, you don't, like, it's really uncommon that people needed them. And so blocking them from accidental usage. I think a lot of the time there's like a threat or there's accidental. I remember once I think someone, when we were a grad, like put in an extra, like meant to do 10 and did like 100 of something, and then it was just like, oh my god, like that would is a crazy accident can happen.
Yeah, we've all been there. I mean, even in my own internal accounts, I've accidentally triggered a launch script that launched tens of EC2 instances. I thought it was only a one. Somehow, I think there was multiple, a lot more than one. And I had them running for about 3 or 4 weeks before I realized, and I got the bill coming in. I was like, oh, I need to turn that one down a bit. Exactly. It happens. It does happen. So I'm a big believer in using things like SCPs and restricting the types of instances, who can access them, and those things to avoid exactly that.
Definitely. And we had a question, which is, who's on the hook for someone creating that many EC2 instances? It's a good question. It depends on your organization, and like if it's your personal account, then that's you. But have you seen, how do companies normally deal with anything that happens like this?
So typically I see a couple of ways. On a lot of the accounts that I work in, because they're big enterprise organizations, a lot of the accounts are actually, you've got individual account owners that look after them, and they've got set budgets they'll look after. So what they tend to do is they tend to set up the budget reports. So they'll look on those, they'll get them coming through. So they'll go, right, we estimate that we're doing this, and they'll have budgets coming through. But reality is, a lot of them have got reserved instance pricing as well. So they, depending on the quotas or depending on what they're doing and the amount of instances that they're spinning up, they all apply enterprise pricing discounts to them as well, or enterprise discount pricing, the EDPs. But typically, in the organizations I work with, it comes down to the business owners. They have to justify their costs associated with it, and who's got the access with it within there. So, but when it comes to compromise or something bad happening, that's a bit of a different story, because then we go through this whole root cause analysis to kind of see what's happened where. Yeah, I don't like blaming people because it makes people very defensive. So I try and look at what can we do to make sure that it just doesn't happen again.
Doesn't happen again. Yeah, like the 5 whys kind of concept, and making sure that, because there's always that level of, yes, someone makes a mistake, but they were in a situation where they could make a mistake, and how do you prevent them from having that again is a big thing. And so this is how people learn, but it's also, if your company has I mean, I used to have this long time ago when it was like admin on all accounts, and I had root keys for everything on my TXT file on my laptop. And one day someone was like, I think Steph's the biggest security risk of our entire organization because of this. And then they were like, you need to get rid of these. And like, do you ever rotate? I was like, what do you mean rotate? I was so young. I knew nothing. I was always really bad at security stuff. But it was one of those things where it was like, that if you don't teach people, and this is where the same with FinOps, to bring it back, is when you onboard staff. Like I always joke that when you onboard at Amazon, you're given your badge, and then you have to tap in, right? And then you have to present your badge at all times. On the train, you have to wear your badge all the time. And so it's the same with FinOps or security. If you don't tell people, hey, don't open everything up to the world, or don't choose the biggest instance type every single time, then how are they going to plan?
Yeah, exactly. It's continuous education. I do think it's all about educating people on the reasons why, as opposed to why not. Because look, I always joke when I'm in sessions. I ask the question to loads of people: hands up, how many people smoke? Fortunately, that number has dropped over the last few years or the last decade. But you ask the question, how many smoke, and people put their hands up and go, how many of you read the warnings on the back of the label that says you're going to get lung cancer and you're going to die? And everybody goes, me. And you go, but you still keep doing it. It's because of the way we put the messaging in, right? But actually, when you start telling people, well, actually, do you know what? Maybe your clothes won't smell as much and you won't stink as much, and apologies if there's any smokers on the line, but it's that kind of thing, right? So you make it something that actually makes people more aware of what it is that they're doing and why, and all of a sudden they go, they smell a shit, and actually it smells pretty bad, so maybe I'll stop it, kind of thing. But it's that kind of thing, right? You change the message just slightly, and all of a sudden people start taking it a little bit more seriously. You give them the why rather than the why not, and people take to it more.
Yeah, definitely. And someone's put yes, someone made a mistake, but someone else gave them admin access. Sometimes it's the same person.
Absolutely.
Like I give myself all the permissions and then I do something wrong. Damn myself, I really screwed myself.
It is,
there.
yes.
And we had another question, which was, what would be your top proactive security tip that everyone should do immediately? Oh, good question. What's the basic, Mark?
Oh, so I think honestly, if you and obviously I'm going to put this from an AWS perspective, right? I would honestly say, just making sure that you've got your credentials, your multi-factor authentication enabled from a root perspective on your accounts, because if somebody can get access to roots, you can pretty much kiss your account goodbye. They can do whatever they want. That, and I would make sure that you have your threat detection and incident response services, so your guard duties, for example, turned on to identify when something suspicious is happening, because if you don't know about it, you can't act. So for me, I'd at least start with those. And then we can go into all the other stuff that could just take you we could
Yeah.
go down a huge rabbit hole. But I would start with there. So yeah,
Robert's put
there we go.
MFA on everything. Step 1.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, that would be my first point.
Excellent. Yeah. Jeff says unplug everything.
Joe, it's funny because I always joke saying, actually, if we didn't have customers, we wouldn't have all the security problems.
Yeah.
Just like
Them accounts.
if you turned everything off, everything is super secure, right? But you won't be able
everything's
to.
super cheap.
Exactly. So, but yeah.
Brilliant. So great advice. Keep the questions coming, folks. Love it in the comments. Let's go into the blog. So we touched a lot on the episode that we did with Mike, which I will grab. So feel free to go and kind of check this out for another day. That's the wrong episode. Oh, where is it? I'll drop this in Twitch. So go and have a look at this episode on the channel. Just as a reminder, if you're on the AWS events channel, anything with this lovely like blue background color is our episode, so you can go and look for any of the FinOps episodes there. But this is the link to the episode we did with Mike. We covered 5 different topics, which are very similar to the ones we have on the blog, and I'm trying to pull the blog up. So here is our lovely fresh off the press blog that we got done for this blog. So it walks you through 5 things that we spoke about with Mike of the different kind of potential, we're not saying that you're in danger, but like potential risks and how to look for them using cost data. So you can clearly see the bit that Mike's done with the clever information about what's good and stuff like that. And so just as a reminder, you can take any of these queries. We've put in kind of templates for date and things like that. And so, for example, with this one, which is about unencrypted cloud front traffic specifically, we're looking for HTTP requests, so not using HTTPS. When we run something like this, we'll get all this lovely data, and this account, not very good, has got lots of potential things. But it's always good like to connect with teams, because would there be, I mean, I'm assuming there would be reasons why you would have HTTP.
So yeah, and some of it could be legacy. So there could be some legacy applications. There could be, I mean, it depends. Because I work with our automotive and manufacturing guys, customers, and even pretty much any manufacturing. There could be some really old embedded software that just uses clear text, HTTP. It's just sending telemetry data through. So actually, on its own, may not be useful to anybody. Right, so it may not contain anything sensitive, but it's just telemetry data that could, or a heartbeat or so on. So obviously, as things are changing, we do try and encourage people to get everything over to secure, HTTPS, secure traffic. But it could be that there's something just that's so old, they can't do it without completely re-architecting, rebuilding, and then redistributing all those IoT endpoints, for example. So there may be some really good reasons. It could even just be as simple as we're just doing a test. There's some test environments that have been spun up, and somebody just hasn't got any certificates in which to do it. So as in pre-prod stuff, and then you can look at it. You can identify things, and you can actually go and say, "Hey, we've noticed you guys are running this website on HTTP. Why?" And they could just be, yeah, they could just be a case of, well, it's temporary. It's only going to be up for a week, whatever. It's not got anything there. It's an experiment, or oh, geez, we didn't realize we had to tick the box, or we thought we ticked the box and we missed it.
Yeah. Any kind of accidental, especially these days with AI building a lot of stuff, unless you request it explicitly, sometimes those things don't come in. And so you want to make sure that you prevent against accidents, especially because it's like you said, the data, right? If it's just rubbish, then or garbage, then it doesn't really matter. But if this is actual important information that someone get their hands on.
Yes, I mean, if I was seeing something like that on the healthcare and life sciences side of the business that I work with, if I was seeing something like that, I would immediately start going, well, we need to go and check out because there could be medical devices on the back there. There could be medical information. There could be private health stuff. So maybe we need to go and have a look at why, and then you dive into it with the customer. But yeah,
Yeah.
you wouldn't necessarily need it for everything.
Yeah, maybe we need to make a little cost version of our kudos dashboards, or a little tab for you
Yeah.
security folks, just to be able to look in our view of customer accounts and be like, hey, what's this sneaky bit of HTTP going on? So another one I wanted to flag in this session was unauthorized regions. So similar to what you were talking about with the quotas being increased, like they took advantage of all the regions. And one
Yep.
thing that you can definitely do is block regions using SCPs. So if
Absolutely.
we spoke about this with Mike, especially for Nubank, when we spoke to him, like compliance with being a bank. Like I didn't even think about this until he said it. But like some countries you're not allowed to do business in.
Hmm.
Like some companies you have to have
Absolutely.
permission, or like, I mean, I don't know anything about that area, but you know what I mean. It's having the permission to do this. I did a talk at Summit, as you guys know, for, I hope you know, for Sovereign Cloud, and so with that, people have to keep things in certain places, and so blocking them is important. In this
Yep.
version, we added this kind of query which shows about if you are looking at regions, just because you might not want to be allowed from like a bigger picture. This doesn't mean anything in terms of like security. Like, is that what you say, Mike? It's not exactly
Well,
like secure. It's more about like where you're allowed to do things.
it is, and so there's a couple of things that come into that. Is it may be from a regulatory perspective, you're not allowed to use those regions, and if you are using the regions or you store the data in those regions, there could be some serious consequences, financial consequences to customers. So I've definitely encountered that. So different laws, there could be some challenges there. Most of the time, what we recommend is people use something like service control policies again to block the regions and only allow the supported regions to be used for deploying resources and making use of it, rather than trying to, once you give somebody something and you let them start doing it, it's really difficult to claw it back and
Mm-hmm.
really stop them from doing it. So actually put the controls in place up front, and then hopefully you won't get there. You won't need to do that. So in most cases, we definitely encourage people to reduce the number of regions. One, it reduces, or it makes it easier so that you know exactly where your data is going to be or your resources are going to
Mm-hmm.
be. From a regulatory perspective, it aligns nicely with your business, hopefully. And thirdly, it just means from a compliance perspective, when you're looking through, it could be a case of, as a business, we only operate out of Europe. So we don't need to use anything in the Americas or Canada or South America or down in South Africa or Australia. We're only going to deploy into Frankfurt and Ireland, as an example. So you know that those are the only places you really need to look at, which is really nice and easy. And then if you've got that, through this query, if something pops up and it goes, oh, I've got something in Oregon or I've got something in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, you can immediately go, that shouldn't be there, right? Because we've got
Yeah.
this list. Whereas if you've got regions all over the place and nobody really knows who's supposed to be using what, it makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to spot something quickly.
Yeah. And I wonder if I can pull this example, because I think on one of the kudos dashboards they have a region, as you know, those word, like a word cloud where it gets bigger. Yeah, here
Hmm.
we go. Let me drag this over here. Live Googling, folks. If this works. Okay, so in here you can see it. So sometimes with these accounts, this might be because you have replication, or like, or if you have I think this is right. If you have some services like config or something, you can enable them and they do the whole thing, or like CloudTrail gets data from like all
Hmm.
these regions. So it might be there by just like default, unless you kind of shut them down. You can also close regions, right? I think you can turn them off as a concept.
So there's a bunch of optional regions or opt-in regions. So if you don't select those, you'll never be able to use them. But the ones that are there by default, that's where we'll use the SCPs and we'll actually block the
Yeah.
access to through the SCPs. But yeah, I think, like you said, there's a handful of the newer regions that you have to opt into. They're not default. They're not there by
Mm.
default.
Yeah. So this isn't like a pro, like this is more of a, hey, I've suddenly realized, for example, if I was looking on here and we work out of Virginia, and then suddenly this central starts to get bigger and bigger each week, I might be like, what's going on in this? So check
Exactly.
out the Kudos dashboard to kind of look into that,
Absolutely.
block those things. We also have similar to what you were talking about, which was having shield enabled, not having shield enabled. CloudFront is also a good example of one that's like a missing spend. Extended support fees, extended support. I think we've done an episode of this. I can't remember, but Mark, do you want to explain what extended support fees are?
Yeah, so it depends on how old people are who are watching this. Obviously, I'm of an age when I can remember older operating systems going end of life in businesses. And it was, I mean, you have people with, before cloud, people were building on their data centers, that have their Windows servers. And it got to the point where Microsoft will go Windows Server 2003 or 2008 and those kind of things. And they go, it's now going to go end of life. And people will be like, I've built my entire business on this. I can't just go and swap all this stuff out because I've got to redo all of these things. So you'd end up buying extended support, and it is horrendous. It can get horrendously expensive. Similarly with databases, with database service products that are out there. I mean, pretty much every product, we always see it. They go end of life. They say we've got a maximum of X number of years that they'll support it. But for enterprises, if you've got the money, we'll keep it going for you for another 3 or 5 years, but it's going to cost. And with that, what happens is not only a cost, because as soon as you start diverting money to there, you're losing money to spend in other areas. So that's one of the challenges there. But also, yes, we'll do extended support, but it might not, it's not going to be top of line. So it may not get those security fixes or those patches or the bug fixes as quickly as everything else. So you may need to be a little bit longer in protecting these before we'll get those things to that kind of thing. And it just, it opens up your environment for a, potential for something bad to happen, because
the I think this is related. Just as I remember getting CDs in the mail from AOL. I'm assuming, is that a patch?
No, just the fact that somebody mentioned AOL makes me go, there's somebody on here who's probably similar sort of age to me and can remember some of the stuff. It's like Blockbuster sending out DVDs. I don't know, Steph, if you remember Blockbuster, but
I remember Blockbusters, but they never sent me anything. I can remember, I really remember like
it was called
where
Love
one
Film in
was.
the UK, wasn't it? It was called Love Film in the UK. And
Is that when they sent them out?
But yeah, so they used to send stuff out. But yes, you would kind of subscribe, and AOL would send you a CD that actually had the software on it that you would install on your laptop that would actually dial up using a modem. And again, this is using really old school stuff to get in there. So the point was, if there was a bug, if there was a problem, like, what did you do? Yeah, it's yes.
You
Yeah.
have to wait for it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So it's just as we're going way back. This is like where I show my own age, where I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about. Once someone on the show had a computer book that was older than me, I think, on an episode or something, and I was like a security thing, and I was like,
I mean, showing
I'm like a child.
I mean, showing my age a little bit here, but my first PC, it was a DOS built machine, so disk operating system before Windows, and the hard drive was 40 megabytes, not gig, megabytes. It had 40 meg on there.
Sneeze on a 40 megabytes. What do you put on there?
Absolutely. I mean, I make PowerPoint presentations that are bigger than that these days.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It would have,
yes,
have a mess.
yeah.
That's so funny. All right, we'll get on to
anyway.
I love the Last of Us. Let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, let us know if you use AOL. Let's get the general consensus of the age of people on this show. So the last one was the anomaly detection of data transfer. So this one was a little bit more complex. I'll get it to run. Do you want to explain a little bit what the kind of things we'd look at for this one?
So this one it's one of those similar to the regions one, where what we're doing is we're looking for things that are out of the ordinary. Should you be using a region or not? This one gets a little bit more complex because it goes on. We need a little bit more context in here. So we'll know one of the first things that people do when they get into an organization is, well, one of the things people either try and spin up and do crypto mining, or they try and steal data. Right, they try and steal stuff that they can use for something else. So when we start looking at has there been a potential compromise or has something bad happened in the environment, what we want to start spotting is any unexpected increases in data copies or data transfers out. What's causing that, and why is it? Now, it may be legitimate. Maybe it's a new service that we spun up as a business. Maybe you've built something new and people are downloading lots of media, or they're doing something. But once you get a baseline, and actually the difficulty is here, you do kind of need to get a bit of a baseline so that you know what your average data transfers are. But once you understand that, you should be able to start using something like this to say, why have I all of a sudden last Saturday seen a 3x increase in the amount of data that's being transferred out, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's not the easiest thing to spot because you do need to have a bit of a baseline. You need to understand how much you're normally transferring out. Similarly, it could be a case of actually, why am I transferring a load of data out in a region I never use?
Yeah.
That's going to be a quick and easy one. But that's the one that's there because obviously people, data is money. Data is how people get money out of it, so they want to steal as much of it as they can. And this is one of the ones that I was really thinking about, and it goes back to that very beginning conversation, which is how would you use cost to try and find some of this stuff? And I was like, oh, what is it that people are actually trying to do? And then I kind of trying to go through, and actually one of the big things is stealing data. So if you can find out where your data is being transferred as a baseline, find out what those volumes are, and then see when it goes up and investigate why, you might have a better chance of identifying something.
Yeah, I got a question. I'm just going to ask them to expand a little. I think that these things, and like you said, again, one thing we said at the start, and we want you guys to encourage you to do is like, maybe you take this report, and I mean, mine's very big. It's 2 million lines long. This is too big. I've just done all my data. Use filters, folks, to save yourself time and money on Athena. I just deleted it. But when you do this, go and like take this report maybe and be like, hey, I mean, I just got this. I saw this on this amazing live stream from Amazon, this awesome blog that I read, and I want to see like, is this normal? Like, talk me through it, like learn what is normal. And you can also, like I mentioned CID and the kudos, there is like a data transfer and networking tab. Mark, have you ever seen this dashboard? Do you know what this is?
I'm going to say no, I've never seen this before in my life, which is probably a bit embarrassing given the role I'm in.
No. I mean, on this channel, this is like, we used to be like, it's almost a not drinking it, but like it's like a when will Steph bring up CID? But we should talk about this like with your team. Like, this is a great resource that customers can deploy in their accounts. It's just a dashboard, but it pulls in all this data. So we also like seeing things. We see a lot of like idle resources from here and other information. So because there's a lot of unique data that maybe you might want to show to
idle resources and things that are just out there that aren't being used. It's a security vector or another attack vector or path that can come in. So again, not only is it costing you money, but if it's just sitting there and just useless and nobody's doing anything and they haven't done anything with it for ages, it's just another way for somebody to get into the organization and take advantage of you. So actually seeing some of this stuff now, this is awesome. Actually, I quite like this.
Yeah, we'll sing. Everyone's like, ignore everyone else watching the show. Me and Mark are like, we'll have a chat outside. But yeah, make sure you check out this data. All right, so we've got like 15 minutes left. We've blown through a lot of stuff. So I want to talk about two more things. One is AI with security, which we'll come into a second, and one is how to help prevent against any of these kind of spikes in spend. One of those is cost anomaly detection. We have done many episodes and we talk about cost anomaly detection, so I'm not going to bore you with looking at that, but check out all of our back catalog and search for that and you'll be able to find it. But one thing, because I have Mark, I was like, what else is there? And you said to use log anomalies in CloudWatch, right?
Yeah. So essentially what log anomalies are is you set it up. I mean, I'm assuming it is very similar to cost and usage anomaly detector. What happens is let's walk through it now. So if you click on create anomaly detector, and then what it's going to do is it's going to go, what do you want to look at? What do you want to view? So if you just type in CloudTrail, let's see if you've got a CloudTrail in here.
Oh, I don't. Oh, it's because it's the
Nah.
central cloud trail. It's because it's the It's got the
Okay,
organization.
so
But what about model
um,
invocations? Would that be
so
interesting
let's
for
just
Bedrock?
scroll down. So there is a little bit of a quirk here, and some of the naming conventions. So if you've got a /AWS, sometimes it doesn't like it. So let's just have a look and see. Let's just try it anyway,
So,
Steph. Let's just try it
okay.
anyway. Just go straight to the top.
Should I do
Let's just
AWS
go
and do trail?
No,
Okay.
no, rather don't do one
Okay.
with AWS on the front. Let's just do, let's just click on any of them. Let's try that one. Let's see what happens, right? And it comes up saying you can only do one anomaly detection for a group at a time. That's perfectly normal. It's just so that people don't go through and try and select multiple.
Oh, okay.
That's all
Cool,
it is.
cool.
And then you give it a name and you tell it what the evaluation frequency is. And what it's going to do is it's going to use this evaluation frequency and it's going to say, I'm going to look over 5, 10, 15, 30, or 60 minutes. And then I'm going to kind of evaluate it over that period to see if it's going up or down, right?
Okay.
You can give it a specific filter pattern if you want. So that will be within this log group. I want to look for this very, very specific thing, right? So for
Mm,
example, you could look at off the top of my head, CloudTrail logs. I know you don't have them in there, but you could look at CloudTrail logs and you say, I want to look at console logins. And
right.
if I've
Okay.
got a high number of console logins in a short space of time, or a high number of attempts of console logins in a short space of time, that's going to look pretty suspicious. Somebody's trying to get into the account, maybe they shouldn't. So that's where you can put that anomaly filter pattern in. If you don't put something in there, it's just going to do it across everything. And then you
Mm,
can, so we don't worry about that for now. And then there's some advanced configuration as well, some optional default values. And this is basically going to say, I'm going to look at anomalies that have occurred over the last 21 days. You can change
mm,
that.
cool.
And then when you click activate anomaly detection on the bottom,
Before we move on, the
sorry,
frequency, does this have any
yes,
like impacted part of like, is it the blocks of time it looks at, or is it how
yes.
long? Okay.
So it's basically it's like over a rolling 5 minute, rolling 10 minutes, over a rolling 15 minutes, and so on.
Okay.
So it looks at the number of things that are happening within there, and then there you go, right? So in this case, we did it. It's there now. What happens if you just scroll down on your log management on page over there? So across the bottom, you'll see we've got anomaly detection, and it says training process usually completes within 5 minutes. So what will typically happen is that will just run in the background, come back to it. I've noticed it can take longer, that it can take up to 24 hours depending on the volume of data that you're trying to do and what it's trying to look at and so on. But effectively it'll create a baseline, and then anytime that there's an anomaly, it'll flag. And then what you can do is you can create an alert or an alarm off of that. So it's not that it's just sitting there in the background. You create an alarm off of that and it'll trigger something, and you can send an email, you can send it to Slack or Teams, whatever people are using. Or you can, pretty much any kind of alerting or event system that you want to use. But
Yeah.
that is how quick and easy it is to configure an anomaly detections on this.
Nice.
It genuinely is that fast. And then you just sit there and you wait. Now,
Wait. Well, we can come back to it.
the stuff behind the scenes, what's also been done is the teams that built all of this behind the scenes, they spent a hell of a lot of time trying to make sure that we're not just getting a load of noise. So they've
Yeah.
really spent time fine tuning those machine learning algorithms in the background to make sure that they are filtering on the right things, and it's genuinely looking at the things that matter.
Mm, excellent. I don't know if anyone heard my doorbell ring. I've got an Amazon delivery, hopefully. Always appetizer. Always calls me with the wrong time. I'm not going to get up and leave you guys because this is important that we finish this conversation, guys. So we've got 2 questions I want to bring up. So I'm not sure if I understand this one, so we'll see. But any tips or guidance for FinOps to help security teams in requesting AWS Shield Advance credits using CUR? So following on for risk 3 in the blog, I was wondering if there was any quick query to link DDoS events for service impact. Does this mean anything?
I need to think a few seconds for this one because I'm not sure. It'd be great if whoever wrote that down could articulate a little bit more what they're looking for on that, because I'm not
Yeah, drop
100%
us an
sure.
email. I think this is an email one. Drop us an email,
Yeah.
costoptimization@amazon.com, for any of the things you want to follow up for, whether you're watching live or on demand. That is a way to get in contact, but that one might need a little bit more exploring.
Yeah.
The second one Okay. I meant to ask this earlier. Probably it depends answer. But what is the balance between multi-AZ security versus backup versus regulations? Can and would keep info in multi-AZ outed?
So I'm going to start off by saying regulation trumps everything. Regulation is law. Regulation is, these are the things that will actually cost you money and potentially, have a massive impact. So in my world, I always thought of what are the regulations, and then everything else is down from there. Then you start looking at, okay, once I understand the regulatory impact of that, then I start looking at what's the business need. So what is the risk? What is the type of application we got? So I could be producing an application that's just for me and Steph, just to go and look at some word charts. Actually, from a backup, from a resilience perspective, from a multi-AZ, do you know what? It could be on a single server, EC2 instance sitting somewhere. We don't care if it goes down for 3 days. It's not a problem. If I'm deploying SAP, for example, or some big CRM system, something that's mission critical, obviously from a business impact perspective, much higher up the scale, multi multi regions, multi AZ. Security is going to be key because it's the data that it's got in there. So if it's PII, if it's financial data, those sorts of things. So we really need to be mindful of the data classification of that. That's going to help drive your data protection strategy, and so on and so on and so on. So the answer is absolutely, it depends. But for me, regulations are king. That starts the groundwork, and then we go from that. And then it's a case of, I've got my regulations. Then it's what data is going to be in there, because that is going to drive my data protection and my security. How critical is the application? That's then going to drive my resiliency, my backup plans, my multi-AZ, and so on.
It does depend, but hopefully that was a good answer to it. I'm really aware we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I just want to touch on one thing before we talk about before we leave, which is we're not going to go into massive detail about AI with security. What I will say is, on Monday, I am doing a show with Pinterest on this channel, so go and hit the follow for that account. I'll show the links in the chat. But Mark, there was an example you wanted to mention, which is guardrails and Claude code. So let's quickly do that in 2 minutes, and just we can maybe come back another time and talk about it in detail.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know what guardrails are, it's specifically in terms of AI, and I'm talking bedrock guardrails. So most people see guardrails as like organizational guardrails, SCPs, those kind of things. But actually, from an AI perspective, when I talk about guardrails, I'm talking about what's actually being sent in the prompts and the responses, the messages that are going to the large language model, and what's coming back. So Steph and I were busy talking, and you said you enabled guardrails on something, and all of a sudden you noticed you didn't realize the cost associated with that. And it comes down to, when you're implementing something like guardrails, if I've got an application and people are typing and getting prompts and responses, put guardrails in, because guardrails can protect against things like prompt injection attacks. They can stop hallucinations or reduce hallucinations, toxic behaviors or toxic things like hate speech, insults, and those kind of things, right? That's what guardrails work really well at. Now, the example we were talking about in Claude Code is, if I've got a coding assistant, does it really make sense for me to include a guardrail in my coding assistant that's generating code all the time? Because guardrails cost, the charging model there is based on the amount of characters that are being sent and checked in and out. So the situation is, I use Claude Code and I say, I want to build a new application, and this is what I want you to do. And every iteration that's going backwards and forwards, the code that's being generated, whatever language you're using, and the iteration going back, those are all going through guardrail checks every single time. So you could potentially see your costs really start spiking on something that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to see. So in that one, we were talking about AI security and so on. So definitely, when it comes to using things like guardrails, consider the application and consider, really think about, at where you need guardrails and where they make more sense, and when you should be implementing them, and then be mindful of what the impact of those could be.
Yeah, I'm glad that we touched on that because I wanted to make sure we brought that up. Brilliant. All right, let's close out for today. So a couple of things to close out with. We have our Secret Richard summary. So at the end of our episodes, you can see a summary of fun notes that I haven't read before. So FinOps and security, they have more in common than you think. Your cost data can shine a light onto your security issues. Be proactive with security with CloudWatch Anomaly Detection, and check Mark and Steph's blog to get started. Excellent.
Yes,
We love the
please.
plug. Love the plug.
Absolutely.
And as a reminder, so on the AWS Events channel on YouTube, you can check out the security episode with Pinterest that I have on Monday. So go and get notified for that, along with all of our past episodes you can see on there. Make sure you check out Builder Center. If you've got a Builder Center account, what are you doing? You're missing out on those great content. You can see all of the links to historical episodes for keys, as well as how to build. And we also do a weekly summary of the episodes we do on this show. So you can see, like, there's the one with me and Mike, DevOps Agent from last time. Easiest way to do that is to scan this QR code and follow me to get those updates. So please do. Make sure you join the the Customer Acceleration Team LinkedIn group. This is where we post all the amazing content from Mark's team, from people from the How to Build team, from Optics, all the people that you know and recognize. So make sure you check those out. And yes, check out our lovely blog as well.
I just realized, Steph, I don't think I'm even part of that LinkedIn group. So I
Oh my
probably need
God.
to get, I know, I probably should get on there.
Terrible. You're missing out on so much great content. And also we put reminders of these episodes. So it's a nice place to kind of get some stuff from specialists like Mark and other people in this area. But thank you so much for joining us, folks. Next week, I think we're doing modernization with GT, who's from a similar kind of team as Mark in
He's one of my,
modernization.
he's a peer of mine. We work side by side.
Yeah. Excellent. So we're bringing in the whole cat team this season. We're doing this holistic FinOps.
GT's awesome.
Yeah,
GT's
he's
awesome.
He's cool. We're going with something that's just being released, so we're going to be something fun. But any questions, please pop them in the email address we had, costoptimization@amazon.com, or drop them in as a comment under the YouTube video, and we'll see you all next week. Bye for now.
Thanks.